We're not silent. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hold
buddy.
on.
We're doing microphones.
I'm putting on microphones because this is the one thing I always forget to do.
That's right, we're professionals here.
Here, put this on.
Whoop.
Oh, no.
Is it just a clip?
Yeah, it's just
That's wireless.
Yeah, it's wireless. Nobody's here yet anyway. Nobody knows the big giant faux pas I'm making. Person that's here, can you hear me? Tom Pinto, is that you?
Can they speak back?
No, but sometimes they'll write me back and they'll
okay.
let us know. But I think we should be okay. If you can't hear me, just tell me. Hello. Oh, there it's my sister Laura. Hi. Can you hear us? Laura?
Just nod your head.
That's never going to work. Oh, yes, she can. Okay, she gave me the thumbs up.
That was a little thing.
Yeah, little thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. It's Natalie from Creative Makers. I'm glad you're here. Special shout out to Laura, since she's here first and the only one.
Hi, Laura.
But that's okay. That'll change soon enough. I'm here with my friend David Palmer, practicing artist, surviving artist, making it artist, I would say. Yeah.
Not rich, but...
But you're doing what lots of people want to do. And I think people want to know how you got here. So here we have another person. Lovely. So let's start with the first question I always ask, and then we'll get into all the nitty gritty. But as a kid, were you a creative kid?
I don't know, but I always drew.
You always drew. You don't know that if you were a creative kid?
I don't know. What do you compare it to? I don't know.
I don't know, but I mean, some people are just like, no, I never drew. I didn't like to draw, or I don't know.
Well, I think all kids draw and most kids stop, and I never stopped.
So how did you just understand as you were walking through being a kid that you were just going to keep doing it? You just loved it?
I didn't really know. I didn't know anything about the future. I just knew that this is what I did.
Yeah.
And then I've been painting since I was really little.
Yeah.
And I've been writing songs since I was about 12 or 13. So those two things have fed each other all along, the two things.
Okay. Well, I want to get back to that, but so you just kept painting and drawing, and then it was just never a question when you went to college that this was your major too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fine art?
Yeah, for undergrad and grad school.
And grad school.
In between undergrad and grad school, I took a break, didn't paint for a while, and was playing music. So it's still part of that trade-off.
It's still.
Although I had a day job at a natural history museum, so I was painting murals and things for them, but I wasn't doing my own work for maybe like a year or something. I was just like out playing music in clubs and then working my day job. So
that was your job at the Natural History Museum, that you were the mural painter?
Yeah. So I mean, I still did it. It wasn't like I wasn't painting, but I was.
Right, but you had a purpose, and they were instructing you. We need a mural of a giraffe here or something.
Exactly, put the giraffe here.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Okay, so you and I have known each other from the early '90s, I guess.
Yeah, last century.
Yeah. Gosh, please don't talk that way. All right, but so I mean, when we first met, we were roommates for the most part. And you had basically just come out of graduate school, or maybe out of graduate school for just a little bit.
A few years. I think I got out in '87. I moved to LA in '88. I think you and I met around '90.
Probably.
91.
Yeah.
Somewhere there.
That's something like that.
So not too far out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember that I think you were hoping when you came out of graduate school that you were, I guess, hoping to be a teacher.
Well, I went to graduate school. One of the few benefits you get from going to graduate school in art is you can apply for non-existent university teaching jobs.
Non-existent?
Yes, exactly. So you're qualified to apply, but it's a long story. But anyway, after about 4 or 5 years of applying to college teaching jobs and not getting any, a friend of mine said, well, you're in LA and you should look into computer graphics because you have all the art skills and they're always looking for people. So I barely knew how to turn on a computer, but I had some friends who had a little production company that they weren't using the Macs at night, and they gave me a key and said, here, teach yourself. And I bought myself some Photoshop books and some other things and taught myself. And a few years later, I was working on Air Force One. And Harry Potter movies.
But between that, I mean, I remember specifically, like when we were all living together, Yumi and Jackie, that I remember that one day you were really mad.
Oh,
you were really mad because you were like, I got all this education and now I can't use it for anything because you couldn't get a job. Because I think I remember specifically because your gender identity wasn't right, or there was a lot of things in the way. But I mean, you did other things in between working the computer graphics stuff. I mean,
that came later. Actually, after we were housemates, I think during that point I was doing some set painting.
That's what you were doing. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
So I found my way into that, and I was also teaching part-time at a local community center, and that was fine too.
Oh, I don't remember that part.
Yeah, it was in Brentwood. Mm-hmm. But it was piecing things together, and at a certain point, I just decided to teach myself this other thing, and I had a day job for, almost 12, 15 years working on big Hollywood movies, and then going to my studio at night and painting. So it was always a day job.
Right, because I remember you always painting.
Always.
Always painting.
Yeah.
So 10 or 15 years in the industry, but I mean, still creative work per se. I mean, problem solving.
It's problem solving. I mean, it's sort of like creative sounding factory work. Like basically, here we want a 3-headed dog, make it look real. So
Yeah.
It was a good-looking 3-headed dog, but it wasn't my 3-headed dog, and it wasn't my movie, and it was.
Right.
But it paid the bills pretty well, and I learned a lot, and I met a lot of really smart people.
Yeah.
And it gave me the money to be able to go to my studio, not worry about studio rent and supplies. And during that time, I had a bunch of gallery solo shows. I had some museum solo shows while I was working full time doing the other thing. So I'm glad I did it.
Right.
Because otherwise,
Of course, sometimes you need to have that extra support.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you needed also the brain engagement. It engages your brain in a different way.
Yeah, it didn't hurt.
Yeah, I think that stuff is all really valid. I love working right and left brain together.
Oh yeah.
Flipping back
front and back, all that. Yeah.
God. So 10 or 15 years is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you leave?
It left.
It left.
Yeah, I mean, basically, one of the great things about working in that industry is that you're always seen as an uncomfortable expense that they wish they could get rid of.
Oh.
And the way that they did that was they kept finding places overseas that had lower labor costs, or places in other states or other countries that would give subsidies to them to do a certain amount of production in their state or in Canada, a lot of stuff in Canada. And the last gig I had, at one point I worked for Sony Pictures for 7 years and worked on like Spider-Man and Harry Potter and a bunch of big movies. And at a certain point, they brought in a new bean counter and started laying off all the people that had been there the longest. And I eventually got that. And then a month after they laid me off, they called me to hire me back for less money on contract instead of on staff. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I've got 4 other job offers. I'll go somewhere else. So I went to Nickelodeon and worked there for a few years on animated TV shows. Mm-hmm. And then that was part of the same trend. By the time I left, they were outsourcing everything to other countries. Wow. And I had to decide whether to keep chasing that to other countries for less and less money and less stability, or to just do the thing that I've been supporting all along and just say, I need to figure out how to make a living as an artist rather than just having some shows and recouping some of my costs. So launched a whole new path. So
would you say that what you're doing now supports you?
Well, I make a living at it.
Okay. Yeah. But it supports you and you're able to upkeep all your bills and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
But
here comes the collector.
Exactly.
No, everything's current.
Okay. No, but okay. So how did you make that decision? What did you decide to do and how did you get yourself there?
Okay. So up to that point where I became unemployed and I guess unemployable in that sense.
Yes.
I'd been having solo gallery shows at a gallery in Santa Monica every few years, and it was fun. It was great to see all the work up in a big gallery space. You were at a couple of the openings.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And then they would sell some pieces, and I would recoup some of what it cost me to make the work.
Right.
But that was considered a successful show.
And I think maybe you're talking specifically about all that linoleum work you did, right?
That, and then I was transitioning into getting back to painting again, and the gallery didn't necessarily want to make that move with me, because one thing about galleries, and all galleries are different, but some galleries, if they get to the point where they're selling something of yours that's a certain thing, a lot of them want you to just keep doing that over and over again, and there's not much room for growth. Not all galleries are like that.
Right.
My experience was that was the case. So we kind of
they're very
parted ways.
Short-sighted that way. I agree. Yeah, they expect, they're like, you work with bright colors. We expect all your work to be bright colors.
Right.
But I'm exploring my dark side. No.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, that's not a generality about all galleries, but everyone's different.
Yeah.
And there are pluses and minuses to working with galleries. There's a lot of pluses. There's some serious minuses.
Yeah. So you decided that basically everybody seemed to have decided for you that you couldn't necessarily continue on that path. So you switched it up to where now you are a person that goes to shows, like goes to art fairs and exhibits work. Mostly during the summer months, right? Or is it all year?
No, it's wherever the weather's good. So in the winter, the shows are in the southern states. So I do like shows in Palm Springs and maybe LA. There's a whole circuit across the South, Texas. I haven't done the Florida shows, but there's where the weather is nice.
Mm-hmm.
When the weather gets hot there and the summers are nice up north, that's when I'll go to Chicago. So, or Park City. I won't go there in the snow. I'll go there in the summer when it's nice. So there's always shows. It's just different parts.
Now, how did you figure out the circuit, and how did you get into the shows? Is there a process?
Yep. So I started off slowly and locally.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I just kind of had mentally dismissed these shows because you go there and there's a wide range of
right.
quality.
There's some really bad stuff, and then there's some really great stuff.
Yeah, some of it's good work, some of it's just stuff you've seen. It's almost like a flea market kind of thing. And so for years, I just didn't pay attention to that. But at a certain point, somebody else mentioned, I'm going to be doing this show. And I said, well, you're a good artist. You're going to be doing this show. And I thought, I'll go check it out. So I went and I realized, okay, there's a mix. And one of the great things that I've experienced through doing these shows and that I noticed there was that there's not a gatekeeper between you and your audience. Anybody can walk around and come see your work. You can talk to them directly about it.
Right.
And that's a great thing. So, and at first I was nervous thinking, I'm not a salesman. How am I going to sell my work? I don't want to be trying to do the whole car sales thing. And what I learned is that I don't really sell my work. I just make it easy for people to see it and buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to convince somebody to buy it. They have to respond to it. And once the pressure was off to be like a salesman and just realize, here I am, here's my work. I'll let people ask me questions about it. I put up a little statement in the booth so people have a little access point. It doesn't explain what they should be seeing in the work, but it tells a little bit about my process, my inspiration.
Tell me about it. Tell me what it says.
Let me think.
You've probably seen it a million times. It's just
it evolves. So basically I tell people that my work is a cross between pop art and Italian Renaissance painting or classical sensibility, and that it's inspired by dreams and memories and contemporary culture and nature, and that the surfaces are broken up, that you can see in the shark behind me. That was inspired by seeing old frescoes falling apart in Italy and thinking about how things that are physical objects that are part of the world change and become richer.
Right.
And I came back and started looking at old billboards peeling. So that's sort of a response to time passing, but in a static object. There's a little thing in my statement about how I don't know what a painting is going to look like when it's finished, when I start. I know the subject matter, but then it takes on a life of its own, and I start responding to what's going on the surface, and it surprises me.
These are all really engaging questions, too. I'm sure that as soon as people read that, if they take the time to read it, that it sort of starts the wheels spinning, and they've got their own questions and ideas about what that's supposed to mean and look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I found is that a lot of people, when they meet an artist and see their work, are a little intimidated. They don't want to seem stupid and ask dumb questions, which there aren't any dumb questions.
Right.
But the little statement on the wall sometimes helps give them an entry point, and then they maybe feel more comfortable talking.
It's a really good idea. I never thought about that as an entry point. I mean, sometimes the work will do that. Like if you have work that's whimsical or just, I don't know, different, I don't know, just not the normal subject matter.
Right.
But I mean, in this case, it works. It seems like such a good idea.
Yeah, and then people want to hear the stories behind things, like the shark, for instance.
Yes, let's talk about the shark since it's right behind you.
All right, and there's another shark above it.
Well, they can't see that one, but I'll show it to them later.
Okay, anyway, so usually my things operate on a few levels. So one of the origins of the shark is that when I was 12 years old, I got a shark for Christmas.
You did?
I got a shark.
Oh
It was a 4-foot-long dogfish shark in a box in formaldehyde.
Oh, okay.
Under the Christmas tree.
Okay.
With a dissecting kit and a lab manual. And the reason I got that is that I had borrowed the catalog from my biology teacher in 7th or 8th grade, whatever it was, and told my parents, I want this for Christmas, because I was really obsessed with Jacques Cousteau. So even though I always painted, I was interested in marine biology. I had a lot of different interests.
Of course.
So I dissected the thing in the basement, which was my lab and the laundry room. And I did drawings of it. Sharks have really big livers, by the way, in case you were wondering. A lot of people wonder about that. Okay. And
I guess if they have to, if they're going to eat people or whatever.
I guess, or they're big drinkers or something. I don't know what it is. But anyway, and I kept the organs in this bin in the laundry room basement, my lab, for about a month in formaldehyde. My mother eventually made me throw them out. So anyway, so the shark is partly a childhood memory, but it's also referring to things in popular culture. Jaws,
right?
Our natural fear of and fascination with what's under the water.
It's got predator energy.
It has predator energy. It can eat you.
Yeah.
Damien Hirst's shark. I don't know if some of your viewers know about this British artist, Damien Hirst. One of his things was he had a 12-foot or 15-foot tiger shark caught and killed and sent to England. He cut it into thirds and put it into these huge plexiglass bins with formaldehyde and showed it in the gallery. So that's part of contemporary art. So the sharks refer to my childhood memory, the art world, movies, and our natural fear of
Now, question, when you bring these to shows, do they do well?
Well, here's the thing. People ask me, I'm going to come around to that.
No problem.
One of the questions I get is, do you paint what you want or do you paint what sells?
Right.
Well, the answer is I paint what I want and then I put it out there and I see how it does.
Right.
So the first time I showed any of my sharks was up in Park City last year. And I just showed one of them, and it sold the first day to a screenwriter who had moved up there from here. I had a smaller one that I ended up trading for my hotel stay at the hotel that I stay at up there.
Oh, that's cool.
And I just did a couple more, so we'll see.
So you'll see.
And the same thing with the astronauts. You can't see them right now, but
maybe I'll do this.
There's one astronaut painting behind you.
There he is.
Okay.
Way here, up there. Oh my gosh. How high do I have to lift this thing?
All right.
Here we
turn
go.
it. There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Astronaut.
Okay.
We'll come back.
You can see the astronauts on my website and on Instagram. So if you want to see more work, we'll talk about that later.
I'll put up the links and stuff.
Okay. But anyway, so the astronauts came about during the pandemic. And it came from a story that I heard on the radio about 3 astronauts who had been up in the International Space Station for 6 months and were coming back to Earth into a pandemic.
Right.
Got my brain spinning. Okay. Yeah. So the first painting I did was called Major Tom, refers to the David Bowie song of somebody who basically is lost in space. So it was kind of like that one, a little bit different, but it was just somebody in a spacesuit just hanging in the void.
Yeah.
And the second one I did, since I was out walking Wilson, my dog, a lot while I was thinking about this, was a painting of an astronaut on the moon walking Wilson, walking my dog. I showed that in Park City. I never had any thought that the astronauts would sell. I just thought I had to do them. Well, the first one I did sold from Instagram within like a day of me posting it. Somebody in Seattle said, wrote me an email. Oh, is this available? Yes. PayPal invoice, shipping, and he had it. So that one was gone. And then I did the one of Wilson, which I showed in Park City. And that's in Houston. Somebody there bought it, and I shipped it to them. And I had that on the outside of the booth because you have inside and outside. And all the people in Park City that were there with their dogs were doing selfies of themselves with their dogs with my paintings. So it was good advertising for the work. And I've done a few more astronaut paintings that have all sold, and then I just finished this new one, and I've got some more in the works. And they're all different, they're exploring different pieces of it.
I think that's fascinating. I love how that sort of evolves for you, though. You just pick something that you're interested in and then see how it works.
Yeah. Also, most of the things that I paint, I get a lot more ideas for things than I could ever do in 100 lifetimes. And so all the ideas, whether it's for a sketch or just a little one-line written idea about it, what it is, or a title, goes into my journals, which I've been keeping for 40 plus years.
I know you have. Can you get a journal so that everybody can just
Yeah, let me see.
Because they're a thing that it's like you want to start doing this, and I always start them and I never finish them.
So, all right. Well,
you got tips?
There's a secret for how to keep a journal going. And I'll tell you what the secret is.
What is it?
You know how somebody starts a diary and they go, I'm going to write in this every day, I'm going to write in this every day? Don't do that.
Right.
Just get it, have it with you. Sometimes I'm filling pages and pages day after day, and sometimes a week or a few weeks or a month goes by and there's nothing going in it. I just keep it with me. So if you take the pressure off, there's no sense of having to finish it. So you're probably going to notice there's a lot more writing in here than drawing. This is a scrapbook also. This was a show I had in a little museum in Pennsylvania. We can talk about the cows later if you want. But anyway, so some of it's just one-line notes of an idea.
Yeah.
Others are just really quick sketches from out of my head. It's not like I'm going out into the world and spending hours doing drawings in my journal. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to just do a finished drawing.
I always find that I get really great ideas and then I don't have anything and I'm like, I'm going to remember this. And then, of course, 10 minutes later, it's gone,
I've gotten to the point where sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep because there's this idea that's in there. And I'll go, oh, God, come on, just go back to sleep. You'll deal with it later. And then I won't be able to sleep. I'll get up, I'll get the journal out, I'll make a quick note, hopefully I can read it in the morning, and then I'll be able to sleep. So it's a sleep aid. This is a good sleep aid.
I know I like this idea, and I think this is something that we forget about. Maybe you don't forget about it, but I know I forget about it.
This is the core. If there was ever a fire, which not that I want there to be fire, but if there was ever a fire, the first thing I would do is make sure family members and animals were safe, and then I would grab my journals before the paintings.
Right, because that's where all your ideas
I can always do more paintings, but I have like 43 volumes of these things on a shelf over in my studio, numbered, dated.
I was going to say, so are they roughly like a year? It just sort of depends.
No, it's some of them I go through fast, but
this one says volume 44.
Volume 44. The name,
started in August.
Yeah, I date every entry. I put where I am. I also have a list in the back of every book I've read for the past 40 years, and when I finished it, so I keep track of all my reading. Put little stars next to the ones that I want to remember as, oh, this is something good or to go back to. So it's just.
I love how organized this all is.
Well, it kind of looks organized, but it's really just a book,
Yeah, I know. But you know what? This isn't the thing everybody does. Not everybody writes it down so that they can remember it, no matter how good their memory is, But it's nice to have something to fall back on.
Yeah, and also the thing is, it's not neat. It's not perfect. I don't try to make perfect little drawings in it. There's a lot of stuff scribbled out, I don't try to make it like a presentation. It's just a place for me to dump stuff from my brain, really.
Yeah.
And what I find is that if I get an idea and it goes in the journal, I hope I'll forget about it. But what happens is if it's a good idea, or for me, it'll keep coming back and maybe it'll change a little bit and I'll go back, oh yeah, there's this and this. So for instance, we talked about the painting I did, actually before we started. One of the paintings I did of Wilson who stars in a couple of my pieces, is of him peeing on this big $50 million Jeff Koons balloon dog sculpture.
I'm sure if you've seen a picture, if we pulled a picture of it, you'd be, oh yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, so you know the balloon dog sculpture. So, but it didn't start out as that.
Oh, it didn't?
No. Well, the painting did, but the idea
Right.
started with me going to the dog park with Wilson and watching him with another dog, and one of them would pee on a spot, and the other dog would watch, and the other dog would pee on the spot. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of how they mark their place in the world. And the title Dog Politics came into my head. So I thought, oh, with this painting, Dog Politics, a dog peeing on a little tree, another dog watching. And so that was there for like a year or more in my head. And I don't know, at one point I was out walking Wilson, and I think I had just read some review or interview with Jeff Koons, and I thought about how that's kind of what we do as artists, like we're marking our spot. We're saying, this is mine, and you know, I'm the top dog, whatever. And so I got this idea of Wilson peeing on that. So I had to do a lot of research. The easy part was finding images of the balloon dog sculpture. Those are online. So I looked around, I found the one that was the right position, I color shifted it to be what I wanted. The hard part, and my neighbors were all wondering, okay, what's he up to now, is that for months, every time I took Wilson out for a walk, I was taking photographs of him peeing from every angle and different lighting. They go, what is he up to now? But it was because I needed to try to find something that worked right.
Yeah.
And out of all those hundreds of photographs, I found one that was close, and I didn't quite like the position of the tail, so I just changed that. They drew it the way I wanted to, but I had good reference for the lighting and the angle of those two things.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Did you ever share what you actually did? Did anybody ever come up to you and wonder and say to you, all right, you're taking pictures of your dog peeing. What the hell is going on?
But nobody ever asked me. But our immediate neighbors know who I am and what I do, and I think other people just sort of crossed the street and kept away from me. You know?
Don't let them see
Who is this guy?
Don't watch my dog, whatever you do. All right, so let's go back to, so there's this circuit.
Oh, okay.
We're going back to the circuit.
Right, the circuit. Yes. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay. So one of the local shows is the Beverly Hills Art Show. So it's a few miles away. You know, it's
easy.
It was easy for me to deal with it. So, but I didn't know how to do an outdoor art show.
Right.
Because who would, right?
Right. First time.
I had a lot of experience with galleries. I'd had shows in museums. I knew how to hang my work and how to light it and stuff. I didn't know how to do like a thing in a tent. So I applied to and got into the show, and not everybody gets into these. It's an application process. You put in your images of work. You had to put in images of your booth. Well, I didn't have a booth, so I think I found images somewhere online of some other kind of booth, and I just used Photoshop to kind of like mock up what my booth would look like. And then, look, the show was in May, and I think I got in earlier in the year. And I realized, oh, there's a show in La Quinta that is an outdoor show. I'll go out there. It's a couple of hours away, Palm Springs area. And I'll see. I didn't really care about looking at the artwork. I wanted to look at people's booths. How do you do this? And I went out there and I saw a wide range of different kinds of booth setups. And I talked to the artist whose displays looked the best to me. I said, oh, I'm just starting to do this. What kind of booth is this? Where do I get it? And I got all this information. So I ordered it, you know. So the booth I got came from Florida. The panels come from somewhere in Texas, and they shipped them here. And it's like, okay, how do I put this together? And I practiced in the yard.
I remember seeing the pictures. There were pictures of him posted on social media of him like setting up in the yard and taking it down and setting it up.
And actually, I do that even now. I mean, I've been doing that for like 6 years now, I think. Every time I have a show, the booth setup's going to be different because of the location of my booth, which way it's facing, is it a single or double. I'll set the whole thing up in the yard. I'll start rearranging artwork in it. I always have a lot more artwork than will fit in a booth or in my van. And I'll figure out what my setup for that show is going to be, and then I'll make a diagram of it and take it down. So when I get to the show, I just open up my notebook, and here's, okay, this is the way the booth's going to be facing, this is what goes where.
That makes it pretty easy that way. I mean, you've got a plan.
I got a plan. And sometimes I'll change it. Like sometimes I'll get there and go, you know, I'm finding there's a lot more foot traffic on this side. I'll move this painting over here. You know, so it's flexible.
And so when you're thinking about doing this and you're thinking about foot traffic, you're putting out a painting that you think is going to inspire people to stop and look at it.
Yeah. So here's another thing I've learned, and it's not like a rule, it's just something that works for me. You know how like a mall will have big, stores at the ends, like, I don't know, Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom's or something at the end, and then there's all the other shops in between.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of like, what do you call those?
Anchor.
Anchor. There we
Yeah.
go. So I think of the booth as having anchor pieces. I want pieces that when people are walking by and there's like 300 artists in a show or whatever, that they stop and go, oh my God, and they tell people further up in the show, oh, you've got to go see that booth down there. This guy's got a painting of this astronaut on the moon walking a dog, or oh, there's this one you got to see the one of the dog peeing on the Jeff Koons sculpture. It drives people to the booth.
Right.
I don't necessarily expect those pieces to sell, but they have.
Yeah.
But they're to attract attention and get people talking and engaged and laughing or
Right. Just
asking
something.
things and telling other people about it. And that word of mouth drives people to the booth, and then they might end up buying a flower,
Yeah.
or a dog peeing on the Jeff Koons sculpture. That piece is in Miami right now.
That's really interesting, though, because I don't think a lot of people think about making a piece that will attract that kind of attention without the intention of selling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
It's
they're
a
for
whole-
sale.
Right. No,
Yeah.
of course. But I mean, and of course you want them to sell, but
Right.
also you realize this is a piece. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I know it'll attract attention if nothing else.
Yeah.
So
So I try to plan out every booth that way. It isn't so much what determines what I'm going to paint, because that comes from just, I have to paint this image. But once I'm picking work for a show, I try to think what will attract people's attention. There's a show that the show in La Quinta is one that I've ended up now doing several years in a row. It's a great show. I do it. It's now twice a year.
you did their poster for them.
Yeah, I did a poster for them. I did a poster for another show out there. So they invite you sometimes once they get to know you. But for instance, with that show, the booth location that I have had in the past couple, there's front-facing stuff that people walk by on the sidewalk, but I'm right on the edge of a big pond, and you can see the back of my booth from all the way across the whole show. Well, some people just have like a blank wall back there. I'm thinking, people across this whole show can see this thing. I'm going to hang a really big piece there that they can see from everywhere, and that brings them in. So it's just thinking about sight lines and, getting people in there.
It makes you. It's not just about hanging your art, but about it's about logistics.
There's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of learning by doing. I learn from my audience. I learn from the other artists. Not so much about art, but about like
Right.
the logistics stuff.
Yeah.
How do you travel smart? How do you hang and light your work? What's a good way to put up and take down your booth so that you're not there for,
Hours and
the wee
hours.
hours, which I am anyway, but I'm faster than I was.
Yeah. So you started with just a couple of shows or just one
Yes.
show?
Okay, so I started with the Beverly Hills show because it was local, and it's twice a year, and I did it a few times, and all the time looking at some of the other artists and thinking, okay, well, some of these artists are traveling around the country doing this. I rented a U-Haul van to bring the booth
The first
and
piece, yeah.
the stuff over, and at a certain point, I built these removable wooden racks I could put in the U-Haul van so it was more efficient, but I realized that if I was ever going to really go out there and do these shows, I needed my own van. Partly because it was costing a lot to rent the U-Haul, partly because the size was limited. Like I wasn't going to rent a U-Haul and drive all the way to Chicago for a show. It cost me a fortune.
Right.
It cost a fortune anyway, but even
Right.
more. So eventually I got a big, they call them Sprinter vans, but mine's actually a Ford Transit van, and they come in different heights and different
Right.
lengths. And I think I've had it 3 years now, a year and a half of which there were no shows because there was a pandemic. But it's allowed me to go all the way across the country. And the first thing I did was start building out the inside with racks for different sizes of paintings, for the canopy, for, the different things I need to be on the road. And as I mentioned to you before we went on air, a lot of times people ask me, oh, well, when you travel across the country, do you sleep in the van? And I'll open up the van, I'll say, there's no room for a human in here. It's like packed with stuff. So no, I stay in motels along the way, and it's nice to be able to take a shower and have a real breakfast.
Probably way more comfortable.
Yeah, because, I'll be driving sometimes 10 or 12 hours a day for multiple days to get to the further shows.
Yeah. So it just started, you did one show, you were like, okay, this is working out, I think I can.
It took me a while to figure out whether it was working out. Like the first show I had, I didn't sell any paintings, but I sold a bunch of little prints that I was doing. And I'm not actually doing that anymore.
I think I bought some prints.
You bought some prints and other people, and it was great, but they were selling for like $10 or $15 each. And I made enough to pay for my booth fee and whatever, and I didn't have to travel, so there wasn't, I thought, okay, this is good. But then I realized, okay, well, that's a little bit of a distraction. I want people to buy the paintings, and I tried different things, and I'm learning about, different price ranges, and some shows people will actually save money for months to go to the show because it's a big event. Other times it's just like a local thing that they walk through. So some shows are more geared toward, I always have a few really big pieces because that's, first of all, I can make more money on them. They're more fun to paint, and there's a need for that. But for other shows, you want to have people to have an impulse buy where there's a little painting this size. Oh, that's so great. It's a few $100s.
Right,
I'll
it's
take
affordable.
it. And, with other stuff, I'll either be delivering it or shipping it. Sometimes I bring it over to people's houses so they can see how it looks in a room. So the bigger ones are more work, but it's also, bigger piece.
So, okay.
Were you going to ask me how I find out about more shows?
Sure.
All right, there we go.
Sure, go there.
Okay.
It's like I'm listening to you at the same time, and there's a question, and I lose it in listening to you.
Well, that was my question. How do I find out about more shows?
How do you find out about more shows?
So there's a few answers to that. One of them is that there is an online resource called the Art Fair Sourcebook that you can subscribe to, and it lists, depending on the level of your subscription, all the shows in your state or region or country. There's different prices.
Is it expensive?
If it's for the state, it's not. It's for the country, it's a lot more. They have ratings. You can rate it and see what are the top selling shows in the country, So and it's like
a resource.
Yeah, and it's like a few $100s a year for that. If you're doing a state or Western States one or whatever, it's less. There's also word of mouth. By doing these shows, it's almost like being a Grateful Dead fan and following the band around the country. There's a community of other artists that are doing this on a national level, like I am, and some of them have been doing it a lot longer than I have. And I find the ones that are, I feel sort of a compatibility with in terms of same level of work, maybe not the same kind of work, but we're at the same level of, artistic whatever.
Right.
And they become friends, and I'll just say, well, what other shows do you do that you think are good? And you should check out this one and this one. So I'll look into them.
Right.
So between word of mouth and resources online, there's also Facebook groups for art fair reviews, and you can apply and say, I do art fairs, and they either accept you or they don't. So I'm in a couple of those. And people will say, oh, yeah, I just did the show there. Oh, this was great. Oh, the organization was terrible at this one. And
stuff that you wouldn't get necessarily from even a book.
And you also have to take a lot of those reviews with a grain of salt, because like I've done shows where I had a great show and the person next to me zeroed, or vice versa. Somebody else has a great show and I'm going, nobody's even looking at my work. So you can't judge a whole show by the individual reviews, but you can kind of get a little sense of, if you're hearing the same thing again and again, okay, it might be a good show some years for me and a bad show other years, but it's worth doing. And then other shows I've done, like, sometimes you have to take a shot and do them. I'll go, I'm never doing this show again because the person organizing it had no idea what they were doing, and they shot themselves in the foot this way, and
Right, it's hard to be around.
And other shows I've had, like some of my best shows I've also had years that weren't so good, but I knew that the potential was there, so I just keep doing it. So
take a risk no matter what.
Yeah.
So I know that you did other things besides painting. I mean, you did a coloring book, and you have your work as puzzles. Are these things that you did during the interim because of the pandemic, or were these things that you already were wanting to explore?
Okay, so the coloring book. A friend of mine had told me at a certain point, hey, you should check out coloring books. It's kind of like this big thing that people are doing. And I thought, okay, well, that's cool. I looked at some of them, and some of them weren't that interesting, and then
Right.
some of them were like really good, like really beautiful drawings. And I'd been doing a series of paintings of carousel horses, which is ongoing. And I realized, oh, this could be a really good theme for a coloring book. So I took my source photos that I had used to do some of the paintings, and I did a bunch of drawings on the computer, so they were scalable, and designed a coloring book. And I published it through Amazon, and learned a lot about that. And it's been great. I mean, I'm not making a lot of money from it, but people order them.
They remember you.
They remember me, and also because I designed the book myself, on the back there's information about me as an artist and my website. So somebody who gets the book also has basically a business card or brochure,
access to you.
Yeah, of me. And so there's that. As far as the puzzles, there was a point when I had a little Epson color printer here in the studio, and I was making these little prints and packaging them and taking them to the shows and selling for a little bit. And then I realized this is a lot of work, and the printer was always breaking down, and I was just driving me crazy.
I don't know how you afforded all the ink for all of those things.
Well, you waste a lot of ink when the printer breaks down, especially. So at one point, I was looking at some of the other artists that are out there, and one of them was selling their prints through this company called Fine Art America.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the way that works is that you create an account and you upload really high quality digital images to the website, and you there's like a base price that they have for each size that they print on, and then you set up your markup above that. Mm-hmm. So your profit is whatever your markup is. Mm-hmm. And they take care of processing the order, printing it either little or big on campus or on paper, and shipping it. And whenever something sells, I get a notice, oh, someone just bought this print for the size, here's your profit, and 30 days later I'll get money.
So you just direct the eyeballs there, and then they take care of everything else?
Yeah.
It's genius.
Yeah, well, it's not my genius, right, it's somebody else's.
No, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so look, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do now to sell and promote our work that we couldn't do 20 or 30 years ago. Right. So there is the internet. So everybody, I mean, my website is the core of everything I do. Not all my work ends up there because sometimes
it moves faster.
But you can go there and see an awful lot of work and get in touch with me. I set up a Shopify store for small to medium-sized work that I can ship easily through FedEx. So people can just go there and click and buy something. In fact, I just found out that I sold that little drawing over there 10 minutes before you showed up.
Mm-hmm. Here, I'm going to go get it.
Okay.
Because when we talk about these things, people are like, wait a minute, I didn't get to see that.
All right. There we go. All right.
I'm coming over.
So this is a little crow.
Here, it's wrapped in plastic, so there's a little bit of shine there. Sorry, guys.
So this is a little watercolor, gouache, and pencil sketch.
It's lovely.
And so they're not prints; they're original artwork. And I just got a notice from my online store. Oh, so and so just bought this piece. So when Natalie and I finish up, I'll probably pack it up and send it to them. And the money goes straight into my account. So it's just like, oh, that's a sale. I didn't even have to be there.
Right.
I don't know who the person is. I have links from my website. I have links from Instagram to my online store, and people can just say, oh, I want this now, and click. So that's
from being a person that didn't even know how to turn on the computer to having
all this I'm not an expert. I mean, these are tools that are out there. Also, if you're an artist and you want to make a living at it, you have to have a way for people to pay you.
Yeah.
So there's PayPal, which I use. There's Square, which some people use. You can send somebody an invoice for something. They can pay with a credit card. It goes into your account, and you ship the thing to them. When I go to an art show, I have a little reader and a little program on my phone. They give me the credit card. It goes in. The sale's done. They get the painting.
Do you use Square? Is that what you use?
I use PayPal, but they're compatible. They're the same kind of thing.
So at this point, do you still have prints available in your booth?
No.
No. So it's just paintings.
It's paintings, and occasionally I'll bring some of the sketches. So when you see artists at these shows, most of them, if they have a bin, it's prints. And I just decided, I don't want to show prints. I've got all this artwork. I'm going to show things that I've done by hand. If somebody wants a print, they can go online and order it. And then they can order it little or big and on canvas or paper. I'm not going to be able to do all those things.
Yeah. Tell me how you navigated the pandemic.
Well, I made a lot of bread. Actually, I didn't. I'm lying. I have no idea how to make bread. I could barely make a chicken pot pie that's frozen. But okay, so that's a joke. All right. So at first I panicked. I thought, oh my God, this is over. I even thought of selling the van. I closed down my storage space, brought all my artwork into my studio. So I had room to work, but not as much. And I just thought, okay, I have no idea what's going on here. This may be over. But pretty quickly, one of my clients, because I already had a presence on Instagram, which is what I use an awful lot to promote my work. I have a website, I have all these other things. And I had clients and a mailing list. So I send a newsletter out every few months, depending on what's going on. So pretty quickly, one of my clients up in Seattle who had already bought something said, oh, I see that your shows are canceled, and maybe we were wondering, would you have time to do a portrait of our dog? It's like, sure, I'll paint your dog. So I coached them through shooting photos, because usually I shoot my own photos of everything, but they were remote. And they shot some, and I said, okay, try different lighting, try this angle, and they sent me more.
I've had these conversations with people.
Yeah, but you know, it's a learning process. Yeah. And so after a while, it's like, oh, these are great, and we came up with a price and whatever. I did it, and I sent it off. I posted it on Instagram and on my Facebook page and on my website, and somebody else said, oh, I've been wanting to have you paint a portrait of my dog. So I said, oh, so I did a bunch of dog portraits. And then another
dog portraits are a thing.
They are, and I love dogs. And while I was doing those, people were going, well, when are you going to paint Wilson? Well, you saw what happened with that. So soon. But anyway, and then another client of mine that lives up in the Bay Area said, oh, well, we just bought a second home in Santa Cruz, and we have this wall, and we need this 10-foot space filled. Do you want to do something for us? I was like, sure. So they sent me photos and measurements of the room, and they're up in Santa Cruz. So we talked a little bit about, what kind of things they were looking for. So I got some reference photo of some of the landscape and seascape things up there, and I put together a sketch and sent it to them, and they said, great. I comped it up in Photoshop so they could see how it would look in their space. Mm-hmm. The wall color right here, you can't tell, but this isn't white. This is actually the color of their wall.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of gray.
Yeah, it's gray.
You can only tell because...
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Anyway, it's white over the corner.
You can see there's a line, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so in this case, I wanted it to fit their space, so I actually they sent me the name of the paint that they got from whatever, and a paint swatch, and I had it color matched, and I painted my wall the color of their living room.
That would be very annoying to have like some sort of similar gray in your painting and not have it either be too cool or too warm and just sort of fight.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted it to play off it, so when I sent them a mock-up of the drawing, I did it in black and white because I don't want color to be a consideration there. But they sent me color patches of things that were going to be in the room, furniture and stuff, and I worked those in as some background underlying colors in the painting.
How did you know that the colors were going to show true? Because everybody's monitor, I mean, unless somebody's got a Pantone chip, how did you even do that?
You do the best you can. I mean, when I shoot my paintings, I use what used to be called Macbeth color chart. Now it's called X-Rite or something, but it's a color chart that photographers use. Mm-hmm. And I set up tungsten lights. I shoot in camera raw. I get the white balance right. It's a lot of technical photo stuff.
Lot of stuff.
But anyway, and I'll shoot the first image of. I'll shoot my biggest painting first, so I make sure the lighting is even for that. Then anything smaller is going to be lit too. And I'll shoot the color chart, and I'll color correct to the color chart to start with. And then when I have my photos, I'll bring my computer into the studio, light the paintings, and color correct each one so that it looks right to me. Mm-hmm. It's as close as it's going to get, because it will look different on different devices. But I've had people remark how accurate the painting was to the JPEG I sent them.
Oh, that's good, because I just didn't even know how that would happen, but that makes sense.
I mean, it's going to vary, but you try to get as close as you can.
So people were just coming out of the woodwork and knowing that you had some time and started to ask for custom pieces.
They started, and then I send out a newsletter usually like 4 or 5 times a year. So I want it to be so that they're not getting so many things where they're going, oh my God, delete, 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 where it's more like, oh, is he still alive? And that's the response I want when they get my newsletter. So usually right before a batch of shows, I'll send out a newsletter. Here's some new work. Here's what I'm doing for the next couple of months. Come see me at a show,
Right.
whatever. So once I'd done a few of these dog portraits and this other painting, those went up on the website and into my newsletter. Hey, I did these portraits of dogs. If you have a dog you want painted, or a cat, or a snake, or alligator, send me photos and we'll talk about it. And I also posted images of the paintings hanging in these people's home because they sent me that. And I said, oh, here's a painting I just did for this home. And so people go, oh, we want something for our home. So it's,
right. It's sort of circular.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Dog paintings, they have a life of their own, for sure.
Yeah, well, people love dogs. How can you not, right?
Right. You do one dog painting and they're like, oh my God, I need to have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Your work is always evolving, but you seem to be in this sort of style for the moment. And I think this is probably people that didn't know you before probably associate this with you now. I mean, I know you work from several different variations.
Yeah.
Where do you have an idea of where you're going? Do you have something in mind that you were intending to explore, but you haven't gotten there yet?
Yeah. 44 volumes. I do, yeah. It's hard to really talk about it because I'm not sure what I'm going to, for now, I have a big commission that I'm doing that's going up on these walls as soon as we're done here. It's like a 8-foot triptych that's going up to the Bay Area. So I have to start painting that. That's blocked in there.
Yeah.
And then I have a lot of shows coming up this summer. So I know I have a lot more ideas for astronaut painting. So I want to do a few more of those. Got some other series in mind.
How much work do you typically bring with you? Like if you're going to do 2 or 3 shows in a row, I assume that once people buy a painting, you immediately go to your truck and go find a painting to replace it and take up space?
Sometimes I do, or sometimes I'll just put a little red dot on it and let people, because if it's one of those anchor pieces, like for instance, the painting of the Wilson walking on the moon with the astronaut, well, the people bought it. I was going to be shipping it to Houston anyway after the show, and I just said, do you mind if I just leave it up for the whole show, because it was attracting attention. Then they would come in and they would see that and buy something else, or commission a painting
similar
or I just did a painting of a cat on the moon. So it starts conversation. So sometimes I will and sometimes I won't. I don't always have time in the middle of a show to run to the van and get more. I'll also sometimes have things hanging on the outside of the booth, like in the back behind like a wall or something, and I'll bring those out. So I'll have things that are stacked or something. There's no single answer. But a lot of times if it's a multiple day show, because some shows are 4 days or 3 days or a couple days, I'll rotate at night. I'll rotate out the things that sold and bring new things in that night or in the morning.
Wow. Seems like a lot of work.
It's an insane amount of work. I definitely don't recommend it, but I also love it. So, you can't expect it to be easy.
I think there's a certain amount of physicalness in it, though, that's really actually nice.
Oh, yeah. Even the long drives. It's kind of insane to drive all the way to like Chicago or Dallas for a show. It's like hours and hours on the road, just sometimes through just empty open space. But I keep this on the seat next to me open, and I'll get a lot of ideas. And sometimes I'll just do this and hopefully I can read it or pull off and write down things. So my mind has time to clear out in a way that it doesn't when I'm here, because here I feel like I either need to be working or I'm doing stuff with, family or other things. There's always stuff to do.
Yeah.
If you're driving to Chicago, there's nothing to do but drive. So
it frees up space.
It frees up space. And there's something beautiful about seeing the land around you slowly change from one thing to another. It's kind of amazing, really.
I know. I love long trips, actually. Yeah. I don't like long trips trying to do them really fast, but like when Dave and we've gone cross country a couple of times, and I really like that part. There's something soothing about knowing you're going to be in the car all day and you're still not to your destination.
Yeah.
And so you let go of the fact of trying to get there.
Yeah, it's the journey. So it's a great thing. And sometimes I'll listen to music or something, and other times I'll just open the windows and just listen to the wind. It's just great.
Yeah. Do you have any gallery shows coming up?
Coming up, no, nothing coming up. I just had a solo museum show in a little regional museum back in Pennsylvania that was a couple of months ago. I'm not against galleries. It's just that for right now, it makes more sense for me to do these shows, because if you're showing with a gallery, first of all, they're showing not just your work, but a lot of other artists' work. And even if you have a solo show, it's up for a few weeks or a month, and then it's something else. And there's a lot of great things about that. But keep in mind, the gallery has to sell artwork to stay in business, but they don't have to sell your artwork. So if somebody comes into the gallery, let's say it's between your shows, you have some of the stuff in their back room, and they come in and they're looking for a piece that's whatever, a certain size or a certain color or whatever, and maybe they'll pull out one of my paintings and show it or not. And people might say, well, God, that's great, but I need something bigger. Oh, let me show you something else by another artist. They come into my booth at an art show, I'll say, oh, let me show you something else that I've got, or something I can do for you, or, oh, you need something that's this color, look at this. If it's at a gallery, they could be showing somebody else's work. So that's one part of it. The other part is, if you're showing in a gallery, let's say you have a show, however many people come to the opening, however many people come through the gallery, it's tiny compared to the number of people that in one weekend come through any one of these shows. Right. So let's say your show's up for a month, and maybe if you're lucky, a few hundred people have seen the work. I'll go to a show in Park City, and by the end of the weekend, several thousand people have seen the work. And the next weekend, I might be in another city, and several more thousand people in a whole other place are seeing my work. So I don't think I can keep enough inventory with a gallery for them to have the work and for me to make a living at it. Whereas if I'm doing these shows, whatever doesn't sell in one show gets added into whatever I was already going to show at the next show. I'll rethink it, and it'll get seen somewhere else. So it's great.
When you're home, is it just all about being in here and painting? How much time do you devote to painting every day as opposed to like putting it into your business?
It varies. There are times when I'll get up in the morning day after day and I'll be painting. There are other times where in the week or two leading up to a show, I won't be painting at all. I'll say, these are all the paintings I can do as of now. Now I'm in the yard setting up a booth. I'm putting together my newsletter. I'm designing a new brochure. I'm adding new work to my website. I'm figuring out my travel plans for the show. Yeah. So it really, it's very, I'm always working, but what I'm actually doing varies depending on what my schedule is, what's coming up. And when I get back from a show, it usually takes me a few days to kind of unload the van, do some bookkeeping, send follow-up things, some ship things. So, there's a buffer period on either side of a show or shows that's devoted to getting ready for and getting organized after the show.
Do you hold yourself to like working 5 days a week and taking 2 days off?
No. What's a day off? No.
No. You've got to have like some downtime somewhere.
Well, I do, but I don't have a schedule like that. Okay. Because sometimes I'll go somewhere and somebody will say, "Oh, how was your weekend?" It's like, "Oh,
it was Saturday."
What's a weekend? But there also are days when I'll just let something rest and I'll go take Wilson for a walk. I'll go sit in a cafe and read, or outside a cafe since we're still kind of in, there are days that we have vacation days and we'll go do something. So it's not like I work every day, but I don't have a schedule, like a work week schedule.
Okay, well, let's see. There's a couple of people. George is watching, Gail's watching. I don't know who else is there. I'll just take a couple of minutes here to see if you guys, any of you have any questions that you want to ask since I'm sitting here, because I'm thinking that we're at an hour. It gets grueling, not to talk, but just it's a long watch. That's what I always think about. Anything you want to say? You got 1 minute.
What do they do? Typo a comment or something?
If there's something, I don't think there's a lot here. There's just, Margaret was watching. People are in and out of this. Mostly people just watching, but no questions necessarily.
Alrighty. Well, look, you should send them to Instagram and website if you want.
I will absolutely. I will post once I get this up, I'll post David's Instagram handle and his website handle. Anything else?
Yeah, just if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, follow me on Instagram, but also you can sign up for my occasional newsletter, through my website or through Instagram. There's links.
Yeah, and his work is so awesome. It's really fun to like look at stuff and see what you did early and then where it is now. It's really fun. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Any parting words?
Go paint.
Bye, you guys. Thanks for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.